Today is Wednesday, March 12th, 2025 at 6:05. And would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Let's have a moment of silence first. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with the liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Maria, would you please call attendance?
Yes. Dr. Dolores Calaf,
Present.
Edgar de Leon. He's present. Edgar? Arlene Garcia? Juana Matias? Maria Muller?
Present.
Mayor Brian de Peña?
Present.
Patricia Mariano? Pat? Yes, they're present.
Did you get me, Maria?
Yes, now I do. Thank you, Pat.
I want to start today's meeting by with just a message of gratitude, expressing gratitude for having Chair Mariano back with us tonight. She is feeling better, and again, for that, we're grateful. She is joining us today online, and we're hoping to have her back joining us in person very soon. In the meantime, I am going to still precede the meeting today, but welcome back, Pat. We're happy to see you.
Thank you, Carl. I just want to take a quick moment to thank everybody out there that has sent cards and called and best wishes. I truly, truly appreciate it. And I think all of that got me through the rough parts of this illness. So I thank you very much, and I look forward to be back full swing in April.
Wonderful.
Thank you. We are going to start with public comment. We have 3 names on the public participation, and we are going to be on listening mode. Everybody has 2 minutes as limit, and as you introduce yourself, please say your name and address for the record. The first person is Mr. Malley.
Humayun Mali, 53 Chester Street. Good evening, honorable members. We, the citizens, are proud to have the best superintendent in the history of Lawrence, Honorable Ralph Guerrero, leading Lawrence Public School. From the first day of his arrival has been positive changes. We pledge to support our teachers and the union. We must pay the best compensation to our teachers, paraprofessional employees, and Lawrence cafeteria workers. We must know building multi-million-dollar school does not make Lawrence Public School great. Lawrence Public School great because of our excellent teacher, hard-working paraprofessional employees. As great Horace Mann said, education indeed the most important societal equalizer. This important impact possible if we support our teachers in the union. In this great nation, when the number 1 responsibility of every citizen is support of teachers union, the triumphant success of our city, our great nation, depend on how well we support our teachers union. The teachers who inspire the whole world, the teachers who educate the children of the world. The true Laurentian means the one who supports teachers union. Lawrence always is strong. Lawrence always unite. We are the best example of support of teachers union in this nation. Lawrence teachers, you are number 1. Thank you for gift of best education for the children of Lawrence. We are proud of your union.
Thank you. Next person is Kara Metcalf. Okay, so, okay, so this was, you put your name in error, okay. So the next person is Jonathan Guzman.
Good evening, everybody. Jonathan Guzman, can you guys hear me? Jonathan Guzman, the Vice Chair of the Lawrence School Committee. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak today regarding an issue of competency determination and their impact to our students, both past and present. First, I want to address the injustice faced by students who were denied their diploma in previous years solely to the MCAS requirement. Many of these students, potentially up to 1,000 from as far back as 2003, applying current local competency standards retroactively to these students is unfair. We owe it to them to revisit their cases and provide a clear, equitable process for attaining their long overdue diplomas. Secondly, I urge Lawrence Public Schools to prioritize transparency. Families, students, teachers, and even school board members have been left in the dark regarding the recent changes to these requirements. Clear communication must be prioritized in priority, particularly when it comes to informing students of their right to opt out of the MCAS or take alternate path of graduation. Additionally, we must advocate for a diverse learning path that emphasizes understanding over test performance. This is imperative to shift from a system overly reliant on standardized tests to one that empowers teachers to develop a coursework and assessment tailored to their student unique needs. We must ensure that non-traditional students, including those with special needs and limited English proficiency, are not overlooked in competency determinations. By creating an inclusive policies and programs, we can uphold high standards without forgetting our most vulnerable students. I urge the Superintendent Carrero and the LAE to take immediate action to rectify past inequities, communicate policy transparently, and champion a more inclusive and equitable approach to graduation requirement. This is not a regulatory mandate. Take your time to do your study individually. Speak to the community about your proposal. Then look into voting for this. The mandate that was put in the ballot for the November election was to remove the MCAS as a graduation requirement. Please table this matter, and I have a paper copy of my statement and recommendations to put into the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next would be my report, chair's report in this case, interim chair. Subcommittee reports. Do we have a policy report, Mr. Superintendent?
Do we have a policy report?
Madam Chair, the Policy Committee, Subcommittee did not meet and was rescheduled from the March 4th meeting until further this week.
Thank you. Budget and Finance?
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. We did not have a quorum. I did have the honor of sitting down and speaking to the mayor. The mayor was in the meeting. I'll be updating on our fiscal state here in the superintendent's report.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Curriculum and Instruction?
Ms. Parry?
Hello. We were able to meet at the end of February 27th as a committee. Even though we didn't have a quorum, we decided to continue to meet because we had been delayed several times, and so we had more of an informal meeting. And we had the presence of Maria Gutierrez Ray presenting about the dual language program in the district at the Arlington Elementary. And we also started to talk a little bit about curriculum and the curriculum, the high quality instructional materials that are in the district. Our next meeting is April 3rd, and we will continue the conversation about curriculum then when we meet again in April. So that's our summary. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it the board members there?
There wasn't a quorum, she said that they met in.
All right. All right, next we have a series of votes. The first one being a competency determination policy vote. I know we discussed this in the previous meeting we had a couple of weeks ago at this point. And we are seeing this item again here. Unfortunately, we added this item to the agenda for the last meeting, but we did not allow sufficient time for the board to review. This time they have, and they've had their information actually ever since we first met. We have additional board members here for considering and voting on this issue. And does anybody on the board have a question on Superintendent?
Thank you. We do have Lynn Cateras from our assessment team, and also when we had this discussion at the last meeting, Madam Chair, we had our headmaster, Victor Caravaggio, but unfortunately Victor got the flu, and he was in school yesterday with a mask on. So hopefully he didn't leave the flu at the high school campus. In his stead, we do have Assistant Principal Christine Lum, who was part of the team along with Victor, Lynn, and several others. So I'm just going to ask them real quickly, if you could put up for the audience the competency determination that was decided on at the high school. And I'm going to have Lynn and Ms. Lum give a quick, brief profile of it, in lieu of the fact that we do have the mayor in this meeting, Madam Chair, and Ms. Mariano, and and Egger, okay? In case they might have any questions. As we mentioned before I turn the mic over to them, the competency determination is the instrument that the Department of Education had to implement as a result of the voters' vote back in November to eliminate the MCAS requirement for graduation. So in lieu of that, the Department of Education had to come up with a competency determination to substitute the MCAS portion. This at no way has any effect on any local school district's graduation requirements. And I know that that's been a little bit controversial because they thought that that was what was going to replace that. So that is not the case. However, why don't we turn it over to Ms. Gutierrez and Ms. Lum to give that quick overview and how that team came up with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. So just a reminder, as the superintendent said, with that vote, we were required as a school system to still implement the regulation or Mass General Law C-69S1DI, which states that the competency determination shall be based on the academic standards and curriculum frameworks for 10th graders and shall represent a determination that a particular student has demonstrated mastery of Common Core skills, competency and knowledge in the areas of English, math, science, and that these competencies are contained in the state academic standards and the frameworks that were previously measured by MCAS. So even though MCAS was removed, school districts were still required to have a competency determination measure or policy on how we are going to address what was previously addressed by MCAS. In our last month, we talked about ours is that we are going to look for students to meet and pass English 9, English 10, or its equivalent, Algebra 1 and Geometry or the equivalent, and a science course of either biology, chemistry, physics, or technology and engineering. So That's pretty much for current students to meet competency. And I think when we were here before, they have to take those courses in order to earn graduation credits anyway. It's not necessarily something outside of what students would be doing already with their coursework.
I would ask, I know that we had discussion regarding the matter, and we had several interesting questions. And Lawrence High School is a place where we have kids that are transferring in from other countries, other states. How do we address competency determination for those individuals?
As you're aware, the bulk of our students who transfer in come from outside of the country, mostly the Dominican Republic. So we have been able to track down, they come in, usually their math course is like Math 1, Math 2, the sequence. We have been able to reach out to various departments of education within the Dominican Republic and get what is covered in Math 1 and Math 2, and we have found that it does align with Algebra 1 and geometry standards in the state of Massachusetts. So we are looking at those in addition to coursework they take at Lawrence High School. But for example, a senior who comes in obviously would not have the coursework at Lawrence High School. They wouldn't have been here long enough, so we take into account their prior transcript and courses they come into and look to see what they align with based on what courses we offer in our sequence at Lawrence High School.
Questions from the board, Madam Chair?
I just wanted to emphasize that we did not come up with these standards and criteria and courses on our own. These came from the state, and they have to align to the 2023 MCAS standards and courses that were offered, and that's where these particular courses come in, and we did have input from the state on this policy. This was not just a policy that we pulled out of thin air. We had a lot of input and back and forth with the state, and this was what they recommended. So this is not something we worked on, by ourselves in Lawrence.
You did receive guidance from the Department of Education, and as I mentioned, Madam Chair, every public high school in Massachusetts has to have a competency determination policy as a result of the elimination of the MCAS requirement. Okay? Thank you. I just wanted to also, Madam Chair, thank you, Lynn and Christine. I appreciate that. I just wanted to mention something, a point of clarification, Madam Chair, that I know that we discussed at the last meeting, and I will recognize the fact that in public participation it was mentioned, and it's something that obviously is a conversation that we had, and that is, okay, so we now eliminated MCAS as a graduation requirement. What about all of those students for the last 20 years that didn't pass MCAS and they couldn't receive their diplomas? If you recall, if you did not pass MCAS, you receive a certificate of attainment. And we are prepared, and the team has been working on how do we reach out to all of those students. But first, they have to be identified, and we refer to them as our alumni. So as we identify those students that did graduate, I'm using the term graduated, from Lawrence High School with a attainment, we now will be reaching out to them through various means to let them know that they can receive their diploma. So they can come back to the district and they can request that they receive their diploma. The only caveat there is that if they receive a diploma, so if they were scheduled to graduate in 2010, correct? And they only received their certificate of attainment, their diploma would read that they graduated in June of 2025. It wouldn't reflect the year that they were here in high school. So the state does recognize that, and we recognize the fact that we need to then seek out all of those individuals back from when MCAS was implemented as a graduation requirement to give those students an opportunity to come to the school district and receive their official diploma from Lawrence Public Schools. Okay? Thank you.
But those students then, I have a question about that. Those students then would have had to meet all the criteria, the qualifications that we're describing here in the determination guidelines?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. That's what, Christine, that's correct, right?
Yes, that is correct, all the way back to 2003. So we have a substantial amount of students, but we are working on procedures to have those students reach out to us. Then we will go back, look at their transcripts, make sure they align with the coursework or an equivalent, and if they don't, we're looking for means to perhaps have them fulfill that requirement by taking a course through the Adult Learning Center or some other means. So we still intend to let them fulfill their requirements based on what the state has given us for guidance.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions, Madam Chair?
Any
regarding?
questions online? Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
we can.
awesome. Well, first off, shout out to Ms. Love, my former teacher. I just had a question. How are we communicating this to our community members? Because I think the inequities that was created by MCAS, and this seems to be a step forward. We have a real opportunity to be in the forefront of recognizing students that may not have received diploma. And I think it seems like you have a plan. I guess my question is, what's the communication plan for our community, especially members who are really interested in getting a diploma if they met the requirements being done?
Excellent point, Edgar. And because we just voted, and we had to re-vote again this particular week because we didn't get it on the agenda on time. If the board now votes in the affirmative, as Ms. Lum indicated, they're doing the work right now at the high school, and we will come up with a plan, both of communication and a plan to try to reach out to all of those alumni that we have and let them know that because of the change that has been made, they are eligible to have their certificate of attainment reevaluated, and the team at the high school will do so. And if they meet those determinations, we will be issuing diplomas to them. So we will use every means of communication that we have. We'll post it on our school website. You know that the school department has its Facebook and Instagram, and we will post it in our local newspapers, both English and Spanish. And obviously, I think that when we talk to the student body at the high school, because they have a network of friends and sisters and brothers that have come through the school, we'll use that means also. So whatever means there is that we can reach out to the community, we will do so. And by the way, this isn't just for this year, because if this policy goes through, if somebody shows up a couple of years from now, we've already had the pieces in place, we'll work with them to issue that diploma.
Thank you. And I think my only other question is, where are we compared to other districts? Because my knowledge of this is based on reading Boston Globe articles and stuff like that. Is our planning, and I know Superintendent, this is your place to answer, or your teams, but our planning, is it in line with other districts? Like, where are we with other districts compared to our district and our requirements compared to others?
So all school districts had put this on their agenda either this past month or this month to get a policy determination policy in place, and then they'll roll out how they're going to, after this graduation and dealing with this class, they'll roll out their communications venue. Obviously, Lawrence is unique to other communities, so each communication plan is tailored to its particular community. And I feel confident that we have the means and the staff to be able to get the message out to as many kids as possible. And we will hold that open, as I said, as long as we have alumni, until we can exhaust all the way back to 2003 to make sure we will continue to do that work sporadically as they come in. Because obviously, you know that there will be a peak in this right now for this year and perhaps next year or the year after, but then it would die off. So each community has its own venue of how to communicate to their alumni. But for ours, I think we feel confident that we can communicate effectively to our constituents.
Thank you.
Dolores?
You know, I was going to say that I imagine that for some people, some years ago, the only recourse that they had was to go for a GED, right?
It depends on what you're referring to,
Well,
their
you know,
recourse.
in order to maybe kind of move on, to show that they have the baseline, maybe to go on, to college or something.
Yeah, so if we had students, for example, that dropped out of school, you know that they're not going to meet the competency determination because they have other challenges, and that is that they didn't meet the graduation requirements because they dropped out of school. So they would have then moved forward, and we would have counseled them or other nonprofit agencies of encouraging them to go through back then it was their GED, now it's the high set. And that's what we have our adult learning center for. And we've had kids go through all of those different venues. So that the high school diploma component wouldn't apply to them.
If I may add, they were also allowed to come for the retests. So we've had students come from as long as 10 years ago. And Mr. Acosta, if he's still here, when you were in INT, we had students come back year after year, and we actually had a program with the Adult Learning Center where they could take coursework at the Adult Learning Center but test at the high school. So they were always afforded the opportunity to retest over the years as well.
Wonderful. So obviously, we have records of all of those individuals, and I know that because we met with the principal from the Adult Learning Center, and he's pretty good at keeping records. So that's another venue, Edgar, that we will use to communicate to all of those students that are on their regs. Thank you, Christine, for that clarification.
And the last question I have, actually, I have one additional, but this is the last one, I promise, is that the actual creation of the plan, I know that it was in concert with the Department of Education, I'm assuming other districts, but at the core of it, was it done in Lawrence High School in terms of with the principals and the people that are actually in the forefront of the work? In terms of the actual plan creation, where did that come?
So if you're referring to the development of what we're recommending as the policy?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yes.
Thank you.
So there was a team of individuals that consisted of Ms. Lum, our assessment director, Ms. Gutierrez, and there was a team of about 12 of them. And they had to discuss and try to make sure that they came up with the guidance that the Department of Education had given us for a policy that was equitable, that was fair, and that was obtainable. And prior to sending it to us for an official vote, they worked with the Department of Education as other school districts to submit those back, and it was passed by the department's legal counsel to make sure all of those variables were taken care of before it was recommended to bring before the board. So it's been vetted at different levels and with the blessings of the Department of Education, if you will.
Yeah. No, thank you. Because I think the most important thing, I think, for me is that community members now saying, man, I met these goals, how do we do this? And if we vote on this, I think it's really important for us to have a plan moving forward in terms of how do we celebrate our students from 2003 onward who actually met the requirements and now we are able to actually celebrate as a city. I think not only for them, but also for the city itself to celebrate.
I'm interested in increasing our graduation requirements.
Yeah.
All the way back.
Yeah, that's right.
I know that Victor, Mr. Caravaggio at the high school is dying because he likes those numbers, and we've done well, but he feels that our back numbers can even show better promise when we now include all those individuals. So yes, you're absolutely right.
I agree.
Thank you.
I agree.
Thank you. Okay, well, if we have no more questions, we are ready to vote. Would somebody make a motion to accept the competency determination policy as presented?
So moved.
So we move.
Second? You want a
Second.
second? Okay. All right. Maria, call the roll.
Dr. Dolores Calaf,
Yes.
Edgar de Leon,
Yes.
Maria Muller,
Yes.
Mayor Brian de Peña,
Yes.
Patricia Mariano.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, members of the board.
Thank you. The next vote is on facilities rental, but my understanding is that we don't have any applications for rentals, so.
That's correct.
We'll skip through that. And the next vote would be voting on the meeting minutes of February 26th. Did everybody have a chance to review those minutes? And may I have a motion to approve them?
I put the motion.
So move.
So move, Dolores? Yeah, okay.
Dolores.
Second.
Okay. Edgar de Leon, I'm sorry, Dr. Dolores Calaf,
Yes.
Edgar de Leon,
I abstain. I wasn't at the meeting, so.
Maria Muller,
Yes.
Mayor Brian de Peña,
Yes.
Patricia Mariano,
Patricia there? She's muted.
I thought you said yeah, but she was muted.
okay, now she's.
Pat, did you vote?
Yes, oh, I'm sorry, abstain.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Next is the superintendent's report.
So that concludes your
Yes.
business for the evening. Thank you, Madam Chair. We have several presentations that I'm very excited about, and especially the work that we've been doing in the district, because this is our bread and butter, and that is how our kids learn, especially reading. With us this evening, we have Dr. Jen Perry to present the literacy presentation. Ms. Perry, please.
I'm actually here with Kara Metcalf as well, the
Oh.
principal of the Lawler School, and also our facilitator for the district literacy leadership team. I have to say that with a little bit of intention because it's a little bit of a tongue twister, but she's going to present half of the slides. and I'm
Welcome,
gonna
Ms.
present
Metcalf.
the First half. Okay. So.
Excuse me,
the
Jen,
board-
in your
Sure.
packets, Madam Chair, members of the board, her package that she'll be referring to looks like this, okay? And for those in the audience, there's the screen.
Right, and there's also, I don't have the little remote control. Okay, but I'll cue you guys. So the first couple slides, if you can, I don't see the little thing. Yeah, all right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our district literacy leadership team, which is a group of individuals that are up on the board there, which I know is a little hard to see. But there are people, a cross-section of the district in terms of representation at all grade levels, both teachers, administrators, central office staff as well, that come together on a monthly basis to discuss the district literacy plan and do various elements of the work that we'll discuss tonight. So this group of people has really been instrumental in moving the work forward and really thinking deeply about literacy in our district. And that's been going back. Kara can probably speak to it better than I can because I've only been here since July, but this team in various iterations have been in place for several years now and have really brought a lot of life to the district in terms of the literacy plan and the literacy work that's happening. The next slide talks about the subcommittees of this district literacy leadership team, the DLLT, of which there are 5 total. The leadership team is providing guidance on the subcommittees, what work kind of needs to be done, is helping to orient the subcommittees and provide feedback. The professional learning subcommittee is surveying teachers to get the voice of teachers and administrators as well in terms of what the needs are of the district, what the needs are of our students, and creating a bank of professional learning for the schools to access in the district. The communication subcommittee is just that, an opportunity for them to sort of work across the subcommittees to think about how we communicate this work out to various stakeholder groups. One of those strategies is in the biweekly bulletin that goes out to principals, making sure that they're updated on a monthly basis of the work of the district literacy team so that they can then communicate that out in their newsletters and other various ways of communication at the building level to ensure everybody kind of knows and is up to date on what's happening. There's a newer subcommittee around adolescent literacy. So the work of adolescent literacy is new this year. Prior to this year, the work is really focused K through 5. There's this new subcommittee and new work around expanding our literacy efforts to really think about a K through 12 spectrum. And the adolescent literacy work is really thinking about professional learning and expanding the plan to include what's happening in grades 6 through 12 this year. And then parent engagement is really thinking about flyers and sort of a Google Drive of resources for parents and families to understand how they can support their children at home, and also to understand a little about what's happening during the school day as well. So those are the subcommittees and the work that's kind of going on in the district literacy team. The next slide is an opportunity that we were asked to participate in back in the fall through our partnership with the Achievement Network. They are a partnership group that we've had for probably more than 10 years at this point, has been instrumental in helping schools create instructional vision statements, learning walk tools that they use to sort of go into classrooms and evaluate, well, evaluate's the wrong word here, but to look at and give feedback to educators about their practices and align to those instructional vision statements. So they have been instrumental. They invited us to consider this visit that was funded by the Schusterman Foundation to think about inviting probably 30 or so visitors into our school district this past February around a problem of practice. And so the district literacy team helped to craft that problem of practice, and what we came to was the question around what is an LPS student's experience in literacy across the pre-K through 12 continuum. So are we really tending to literacy in coherent and equitable ways across the district, and how does that experience as students move across buildings and across the span of education and more. So that was the problem of practice that we asked them to come in and give us feedback on. And 6 schools participated in this visit: the Breen, the Tarbox, the Partham Elementary and Middle School, SES Annex, and LHS. And some of the findings are on the right side of that slide that you might argue that are not necessarily literacy based, but I think they're levers to support literacy work in our district. And I'm going to read these because I think they're important, and they're things that as I go back to the district literacy team that we need to think about both in this committee and otherwise, I think both in the curriculum and instruction department as well. So the first is clarifying a district-wide vision for excellent teaching and learning, ensuring the coherence across schools. As I had mentioned, there are vision statements in each building, but one of their findings was, do we have a clear understanding at the district level that can inform all of those vision statements about what excellent teaching and learning is? And that coherence across the schools really matters, especially if we're thinking from the student lens. Strengthening teacher practice through learning directly tied to curriculum. I've mentioned to you in the past couple months that we have high quality instructional materials. I want to say 99% of the classrooms across the district have identified and adopted and are implementing high quality instructional materials. Their perspective was to really take that work and really make that the focal point of how we engage our educators to really think about their practices through what is being provided to them, so that we keep the grade level expectations high, but that they're really thinking about the students in front of them as well. And so when we talk about academic discourse, what does the curriculum provide us? And then what do our students need? And having that sort of work around unpacking the curriculum for our students. The next one is elevating multilingual learners and linguistically sustaining practices, again, through the lens of the curriculum that we have, and ensuring that our classrooms are culturally responsive. I'll talk in another presentation in a little bit more about culturally and linguistically sustaining practices. But this is a finding that I feel like is really the focus of our department in curriculum and instruction, but I know the district's priority as we have such a high population of multilingual learners. And then finally, Lawrence is a district of many partnerships, many high-quality instructional, high-quality professional learning opportunities from a variety of different partnerships, and sometimes that can be a little bit confusing. There can be a little bit of redundancy and things like that. And so one of their suggestions was to make sure that we are working with our partnerships on alignment, to make sure that they're working through our instructional vision and that they're supporting our educators in a coherent way, so that the work isn't more complicated by the partnership but is streamlined by the partnership, if you will. And at the bottom of this slide, we don't have to open it up, but just for your reference, the whole summary, so you can sort of, I sort of talked over these four insights or opportunities that they're offering us, but the whole report is there for you as a summary of their findings. Like I said, we just got it yesterday, I believe it was. So bringing it back to the district literacy team and then figuring out what our next steps are in alignment with these four priorities is work that we have to do in the spring with this team. With that, the next slide is just a meeting recap of the district literacy team, the work that we've been doing in terms of establishing our subcommittees, making sure that they have goals and objectives for this school year. They, like I had mentioned, helped support identifying the problem of practice for the Schusterman visit. So if you look at November, we started having those conversations into December. January is sort of that sort of pulse check on the work of the subcommittees. Are we on track? Are we off track? What do we need to adjust? February, we looked at, with Dr. Linkatarius, the data of our mid-year data, which Kara's going to speak about in this presentation, of our DIBELS and MAP data to see where our students are performing, and some of that work will continue into March. And then we'll kind of revisit our district literacy plan, making sure that, like I said before, that it's really a K through 12 plan and not just a K through 5 plan for the remainder of this year. So that's the one component of the literacy work that's happening. Kara's going to speak a little bit more about some of the data and other elements of literacy in our district. Okay?
Excuse me, may I ask a question?
Pat, was that you? Did you have a question?
Yes, I do. Does the work of your subcommittees mirror the SQR, the evaluations of the district that we go to a couple of times a year?
I just want to make sure I heard all of that. Pat, was your question whether or not the district literacy team is involved in the SQR reviews?
Or they share the same activities, that their same tasks as the SQR when they come in to do an evaluation of a classroom?
No, they're, I would say, two very separate processes.
Okay.
Okay? All right.
Good evening. If you can go to the next slides. So this is just a recap of some of the work we've done with the DLLT over the last 4+ years. So prior to 2022, just before COVID hit, we did have a strategic literacy task force. I was part of that original committee and have maintained my position on the committee until this year. I think there's only 2 other members that have maintained since that point. In 2022 is when we had the first draft of the strategic literacy plan. That's what's posted on our website. If you go now, you can still see that draft. And that outlines a few things that we'll look at in a minute. And then in 2023, we just decided to make this more formal district literacy team consisting of the members that Jen shared earlier, with the hopes of getting stakeholders from as many schools as possible, and not just principals, but across teachers, coaches, and such, and central office staff. So that's when the DLLT really became into fruition, was in 2023. And that's around the same time that the Science of Reading PD came into play. As part of our district literacy plan, we knew that PD was really important. So we started doing Science of Reading with pre-K through 2, which was coursework, which we'll go over in a minute, and coaching. And then 2024, we expanded it up to grade 5, and we continued with the pre-K to 2 teachers that had had the training the first year in 2023. They continued their training in 2024 with more advanced coaching. And now in 2025, we are expanding to the adolescent literacy, and we're adding grades 6 through 9 into the training module. So we have them taking courses, there's in-school coaching happening, and then the year 1 and 2 staff are now continuing, and some of them are now in their 2nd or 3rd year of training with coaching in their building. We can go to the next slide, please. So as part of the district literacy plan, we have outlined some core beliefs, and these started prior to 2022, and then were incorporated into that plan in 2022. I'm just going to highlight some of the underlying things. So just the belief that literacy is an essential life skill, and it's really important to lifelong learning and well-being. Having an equitable, culturally responsive literacy program is really important to us, and really thinking about the linguistic and cultural strengths that all of our students bring to us, not a deficit mindset at all. We are under the mindset that literacy enables critical thinking, and that really informs how you become as an adult with agency and engagement in your community. And really importantly, and this is why the PD is so important, is that we believe that all staff of students, all teaching staff of students really have a duty to provide literacy instruction in some way, explicit literacy instruction. And we also believe in partnering with families, and that also multi-year professional learning is really important for our staff in order to make this happen. So those were the key beliefs that helped inform what you're going to see on the next slide. So as part of our plan, there's 4 main pillars, and if you were to open up the full plan, which is linked in the PowerPoint, you can read the full vision for each of these pillars. But the 4 main pillars are curriculum, pedagogy, data and assessment, and intervention. And so if you look at the bottom row, that's just highlighting some of the work that the district literacy team has done over the past few years in regards to each of these pillars. So like Jen mentioned, we have implemented high-quality instructional materials. Under pedagogy, we've partnered with Hill for Literacy to provide professional learning in terms of coursework and coaching. And that includes this year rolling out the adolescent literacy PD in grades 6 through 9. In Pillar 3 for data and assessment, we have the district literacy team has created a common assessment bank. So we did a lot of digging in the very beginning to see which literacy assessments are being used within each school, and we have that in a database. But primarily, and what is mandated, is DIBELS and NWA MAP, and across all of the schools. And intervention, which is Pillar 4, that includes our MTSS, and that our team is in a position to ensure that literacy intervention is happening across all schools and built into our schedules, and to think about progress monitoring, using M-class intervention and other mechanisms, and thinking about how we're looking at data. And so many of our staff are data-wise trained, and so that's really important as well. You can go to the next slide. And so this is just a trajectory. Sorry, I'm so blind, I can't look up and down at the same time. This is so hard. I'm just going to read off my paper. So over the last few years, we've had a trajectory of how our phases have gone, and this was part of the planning process. We knew we couldn't roll it all out at once. So in 22-23 is when we started with the pre-K to 2 modules, and many staff, I believe, as we were looking at last year's presentation, about 78% of those staff had been trained in those modules, and then coaching had continued in a lot of the schools. Then the following year, we continued with coaching for the K-2 schools, but we also built in that second phase that grades 3 through 5 would have their training and their coaching would begin. And if you look at 24-25, what's starting to happen is that any staff that were trained in that phase 1, mostly pre-K and through 2 schools, we're moving towards sustainability in that area. So we're adding on adolescent literacy and the training for 6 through 9, but hopefully over time what is happening, and that's why you're seeing those white boxes, is there's sustainability, that schools are able to maintain the coaching on their own, take what we've been learning and keep it going. And so hopefully when we get to this next school year, when we're really building in the coaching for 6 through 9, and most of our younger schools will be self-sustaining. Obviously, new staff come in, and we're going to have to figure out a plan for how do we train new staff that wasn't here in the phase and such, but that's the hope that this district becomes sustaining on its own without that PD partner. Okay. We're going to look at just a little, very little bit of our data, but a very high-level data for our DIBELS and for our MAP. So this chart just outlines all of the subtests that you can find in DIBELS. So it's letter naming fluency, phonemic awareness, can students hear sounds and break them apart? It looks at correct letter sounds, so they're presented with words. Can they say the individual sounds, but it also measures can they read those whole words? And then it goes beyond that to more word reading, reading in text, and then as you get into the higher grades, 2nd through 5th, it starts to look at some comprehension in the maze test. So it really does test the gamut. And if you look on the last column, it tells you when those tests happen and what grades. So it's a trajectory. So we decided we would pull some data where you could see where we've sort of grown. This is middle of the year data, so this is not end of the year data. But it does give you a snapshot of the last few years, how we've improved. So currently, 39% of our students are at or above benchmark. And if you look back, you can see the state increase over the last 3 or 4 years, starting at 30%. So there is a correlation between the work we're doing with science of reading and this training and to our DIBEL scores. Similarly, this is very similar data. This is just breaking it down by grade level and subgroup. So you can look at our kindergarten, where we've come from the beginning of the year to the middle of the year in terms of at or above benchmark students. And so you can see that kindergarten makes a big jump, and each grade level is making a jump. So when you see that jump, it means that they're jumping and we're closing gaps, we're closing proficiency gaps, because they're not maintaining where they came in, not just in their score, but that level. They're moving up levels, so we're closing gaps, getting closer to proficiency by the end of the year. So this is a snapshot of what the NWEA MAP test assess. Obviously, I'm not going to read all of these things. There's one key takeaway from this, though, is that when you're thinking about the reading K-2 test, which is what we give kindergartners, first grade, and second grade students when schools elect this test is read aloud to students. When they get to the reading 2 through 12, they're reading that on their own. So there is an overlap in second grade where schools can elect to choose either the one that's read aloud versus the one that they read themselves. As of right now, I think there's maybe one school that uses the reading 2 to 12 for their second grade, and I believe everybody else uses the reading K-2. So it measures a whole bank of different things. It gives you measures with comparative data across the country. However, it is adaptive in the sense the better the kids do, the more they move up, and so you can see a lot of growth, and it does kind of push them to the next level. This is just a snapshot of, the years, across the years from 2022 to 2025 for those that are above, at or above in their percentage for MAP testing. And this is the winter data, so again, middle of the year, similar to what that first slide of the DIBELS was referring to. It's not quite as clear as the DIBELS going up, but it's ebbing and flowing. And then the next slide, is there one more? Oh, I think. No? We got cut off. Well, I'm not sure if you have the last slide shared in the PowerPoint, but there's a similar slide to the second DIBEL slide that shows by subgroup and grade level the same exact comparison from beginning to middle of year for MAP data. Are there any questions about the team or the data?
Madam Chair?
Any questions?
Yes, I see the big gain in the kindergarten.
That's a good thing.
Can I assume then that they would do better as they go on?
Yes, that would be the hope. I don't know if we have exact cohort data to map cohorts. What's interesting, most of our schools are early childhood until K, so then they move on to different schools for first grade, and so tracking that cohort data can get a little bit tricky, but I'm sure there's a way we could pull to see exactly, follow that track of students as they go on, for sure. So that would be the hope, yes, that as they're moving on, they're be going to first grade more prepared, thus leaving more prepared, and hopefully that will trickle up, yes.
All right, that makes sense.
Any other members?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. So, is the hope that schools become self-sufficient and self-sufficient, I guess, when it comes to training folks coming in, new folks, and if that's the case, how do we ensure accountability in that plan?
So the hope currently, yes, is that the schools that have done the Hill for Literacy coaching, their school-based coaches have been coaching alongside those coaches. And the hope, yes, is that schools are sustainable in this. But the question that you're asking is, how do we make sure that keeps happening? As we're going to have turnover with coaches or, a lot of staff turnover, whatever's going to happen. So I think that's the role of the DLLT, is to make sure that we're doing annual checks to keep on top of how many staff are trained, is the coaching still happening? And I think that's probably the work of the curriculum instruction department to really think about, we have, with school autonomy, we have schools doing coaching models in different ways, and so we really need to make sure through the DLLT and CNI that there's consistency about expectation about this type of coaching. And so I think that would be the job of the two teams here.
And
Yeah,
I would
consistency and obviously progress for our students. So that's what I was asking. The other question I had is your second to last point on the Lawrence District Literacy Plan for Literacy Beliefs is we must partner with families to support our students. I'm wondering, there's been a lot of data. Has there been surveying of families in terms of the work that we're doing to partner with families? What does that actually mean? And if not, what are we thinking? I guess is the question.
I'm sorry, can you just repeat that? Was that about surveys of families?
So in the Lawrence District Literacy Plan for Literacy Beliefs, established, I think it was in 2018. I apologize. I don't know, a year. One of the points was partnering with families to support students' skills in reading. I'm wondering, as we're collecting data, as we're formulating a plan, how are we actually partnering with families? And if not, what is the plan to do so? So I've heard about teams and committees. I've yet to hear about the partnering with families of Lawrence when it comes to this.
I could speak to, like you said, the subcommittee on parent engagement is looking for ways to bridge that partnership, right? And to think deeply about the partnership. They're looking at collecting resources. I think the piece that we're looking for is what's the action. I see the parent university as an opportunity to start building out in the coming school year opportunities for the district literacy, sorry, I knew I was going to do it, district literacy leadership team to hold sessions at that parent university to bring to life some of those resources, to make, to have that interaction rather than just this place to go and maybe not really know how to access it or what to do with it, but to really sort of have those opportunities with parents live to understand and unpack some of those things and figure out what they might do at home and with their children to reinforce the things that are happening in school. Kara, I don't know if you have other ideas of things that you've seen happen in the past, but that's one thing forward thinking about what we can do differently, both at the CNI department and the DLLT in terms of leveraging the parent university, which has been a great addition this year.
I want to add on that the subcommittee is also working on avenues of getting sort of like mass distribution of information to parents about these things. And so we're trying to work with the IT department on how we can have a parent Google Drive where things can be placed there and it's easy access. So that's one thing. The parent engagement team also is creating resources for the school leaders to then put in the hands of parents. So sort of I don't want to say a barrier because I'm sure it's good, we can figure it out, but something that we need to sort of wrap our heads around is what are those different things that are happening in schools to reach out to parents. Some schools are having literacy nights. Some schools are presenting this data on their own at their PTA meetings. So the avenues are different in every school because of autonomy, and I think part of the role maybe of the parent engagement team is to try to collect and find out what are all these things that are happening. Again, every school uses their parent engagement time for different things, so is it always around literacy? Probably not, but I do think that that's valid. Maybe at the Tuvos, Superintendent, we can do a little something. We're getting more and more parents every time. So that could be another avenue too, is those bigger meetings.
Yeah, and I think it's important because we tend to say parents are not engaged, but it's on us to sort of reach out to them. But I guess my last question is, in terms of reaching out to community members, because I'm struck by this, is autonomy. Do you feel like autonomy is actually a barrier to having consistency in terms of messaging? Because I think we have an opportunity to bring parents and families in to this really amazing program that I think everyone can benefit from, and yet I think, and I'm a big fan of autonomy. I don't want to sort of dwell that, and yet I think sometimes it becomes a barrier in terms of communication. I don't know if you want to answer that, but the honest truth is, does it become a barrier for actually consistency in terms of our communication to families who can then use resources to really benefit from this program?
I would say it goes back to that, the feedback from the Schusterman Foundation about having a clear vision at the district level that we can use to help support schools, right? So I don't know if it's a barrier, but I think it's work that we still need to do to clarify excellence in terms of curriculum and instruction, and that might include what parent engagement looks like around curriculum and instruction as well, so that we trust that our principals know their communities really well and how to engage their community members, but how they do that might be different in each building, but are they doing it, I think, is that sort of accountability level. Are they including literacy in their parent engagement opportunities? It looks like Edgar's gone, but I think the question's still a really important one, and I don't know if he can still hear me or not. But I would say it's not a barrier, but something that I think there's that sort of, accountability is a hard word here, but rather I think that level setting of expectations and being clear with our communication at the district level to support the buildings to know what they need to do to support their families. I don't know, Kara, do you have any other thoughts?
No, I agree. I think there's sort of that top-down vision needs to come down, and I think that principals are very capable of doing things well if there's a clear vision. I think the other piece to that is having an avenue for making sure that principals have time for collaboration after the fact, because I think there's lots of really good things happening in every school. And slightly different, but maybe it's the job of the DLLT to make sure that anything literacy-based is coming together, if we're just talking about literacy. But I think that's an important piece, is making sure that the good things that are happening are shared in a way that to create an equitable space, so that something that's amazing that's happening in one school, another school can at least have the option to do that as well.
Madam Chair, anybody else?
I have some
Absolutely.
suggestions and comments, but I'm wondering if we need to wait for our Zoom connection to be reestablished, so we can reestablish a quorum.
So we're not voting on any items, so,
Right now, we're not.
so we can continue the discussion as we try to get them
All
on.
right, well, I'll say my comment in the meantime. Thank you, this is really good. I mean, I do 100% agree, essential life skill, right? This is what we need to work on, and as a consequence, math and everything else, we'll just go with it, as you know better than anybody. And I will also say, and I'm sure you know, that, literacy starts at birth. Like this is when children start their literacy journey. So I see an opportunity also to partner not only with families, which is very important, and consistently with families in well-attended events or some sort of a reading instruction for families, or suggestions, but also with early education providers in the city. With also enrichment programs in the city too that do enrichment activities in the afternoon, that just maybe invite those programs to training so they can also apply. I was looking to the great plan that you have actually, and all those pillars apply to early education programs,
That's a
as well.
great point, yep.
So I think that training applies to everybody. Honestly, we all know that our children, a lot, I'm afraid to say because I would be making it up, but this 14% here tells me that our children are not coming in ready for kindergarten. And there's a way to increase that number or to make it better. And, they come in at a disadvantage when they're 4-year-olds or 5-year-olds. So I think we can try strategies that hopefully will lead to better results. And I would love to see more data in terms of how this impacts, obviously, future data as you presented. Whether or not we implement the early education piece, I know it's going to be great, but I think there's ways to give it a boost, and I think it's through early education. I mean, that's where it really is.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I appreciate expanding our vision of what that engagement looks like beyond just families, but also the other folks that are working with our students.
And I know for an experience that early education centers, many of them use DIBELS already. So it's a good way to maybe have a consistent assessment across the city.
Yep. Thank you.
Anything else, Madam Chair?
Totally agree.
I have a couple of questions, and I have the liberty of putting you on the spot. DIBELS, do we DIBELS kids because it's about reading and the whole science of reading? Do we double kids in Spanish?
I can speak from my school. I do not dibble in Spanish.
Do we have a Dibbles exam in Spanish?
There is a Spanish version of dibbles available, I believe. I don't know if it's all grades, if it starts in K, but I do believe there is one that's available.
I would assume that it would start in the early grades. Maria, do you have Dibbles in Spanish?
I believe we do. I can
Yes.
confirm that for you.
So, and you know, we've been going through planning, and all of you know that we're very focused and keen in on multilingual learners and the need for us to really hone in that area. It would be it's almost an obvious that if we're teaching kids how to read at kindergarten, many of our families that are coming in brand new, that kids don't know how to read, but they only know how to listen, and they were talking in Spanish. Why are we not monitoring how they're functioning in terms of picking up reading skills in kindergarten in Spanish?
I will say that our multilingual learners are typically in the past few years, especially in my school, the subgroup that makes the most growth. And it is true, they come in very late in listening, and then all of a sudden you see a big jump at the end when it starts to click. But it is really, it's great to watch them grow. But I agree with you that we could maybe look into that.
Yeah, and I think it goes to that idea of leveraging their language skills as an asset, right? Rather than seeing it as not important to their holistic education, right? So like, how do we do that? So that teachers are knowledgeable about what their skills are in order to leverage those places.
Especially given the fact that the team voted and you put together what your core beliefs are, and you're talking about culturally responsive literacy and linguistic and cultural strengths and assets. So I think that that's something that I think it behooves us to really look into. Second question that I have, and I hope I have the right answer, do we map our kids, our MAP assessment in Spanish?
I don't believe we do either of them in Spanish currently. So those are good points for us to take back to assessment and really reevaluate.
So I'm correct. So I think that the science of teaching to read is with phonemic awareness and all those pieces, that can happen in any language. So getting to Edgar's point, especially with the young children coming into the district, if we're going to engage families and invite them to help them learn how to reinforce what's being taught in the classroom at home, and if we're going to do workshops, which is the first language that we have to use with them to help them understand the science of reading. Correct? So that's the logic behind it. I entrust in both of you, you're seasoned veterans here in Lawrence Public School, to continue to look at that, bring that back to the team, and let's be aware of what those core beliefs are and make sure that we test them out, that we're doing it appropriately for our kids. That's all.
Thank you for that feedback.
There is a Spanish version, and it's called Indicadores Dinámicos del Éxito en la Lectura.
Why don't you let them do their homework instead of giving them the homework? Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
But that's great then. I think we got a plan.
There's always room for improvement, right, with all of our practices. So thank you for pointing
Appreciate it. And I think that what Edgar said, my takeaway, and that's really what we have to hone in on. How do we get parents very early on and help them teach those skills of sounding out letters, of putting those, and I remember doing this when I was at my other school district and looking at the kindergarten teachers when they used to bring in parents. And I think that excites them, because how can it not excite a parent to hear their children put words together and sentences, correct?
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
thank you. Great job.
Okay. Thank you.
Where am I, Madam Chair? Oh, I'm here. Okay, good. How about a break in the action, and let's have our CFO come up to talk about framework of our FY 25-26 fiscal update as we're preparing the budget for this coming year. Who didn't pay the bill? Where's O'Donis? Oh.
I am concerned about open meeting law a little bit.
Well, we're not
Even without a vote, I've been in situations where we just have to stop the meeting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Take a 5-minute break.
If you'll accept the motion to recess, Madam Chair, for a little
Can I
bit.
have a motion to recess quickly?
So move.
Second.
All right, it's recess. Maria, call the
Recess.
roll, I guess.
Dolores Calaf,
Yes?
Edgar de Leon,
I don't even think we can take.
María Muller,
To
Yes.
recess.
Mayor Brian de Peña.
Yes.
We have, thank you.
All right, let's recess for 10 minutes and see if we can get it back.
Okay, we are resuming the meeting. Can I have a motion to restart the meeting?
So move.
Dolores, would you second?
Second?
Maria, call the roll. Thank you.
Dolores Calaf,
Yes.
María Muller,
Yes.
Mayor Brian de Peña.
Yes.
We are having some technical difficulties. We are going to continue the meeting, the presentations that are still pending, and we will post them online as soon as the meeting is over and connection is reestablished. So the next item for presentation is the FY 25-26 fiscal update.
Yes, good evening again. I'll be brief with this. We're going to be talking about budget here for next month and the month after and the month after. So I just want to give, this process really started back in October, just about when we started sitting down with the department heads and talking about, you know, how is our money aligning with our priorities and the turnaround plan and you know, where were we at, right? So it started back then in December. We started as an internal subcommittee to talk about our priorities and our guiding principles for this budget. Last 2 weeks, we met with every single school and every single department in the district to talk about their needs and how, you know, what we can do to align our money to their needs and our goals. I just want to give a couple of numbers real quick. Enrollment across the state, it was down 0.04%. There are only 3 other districts that had an increase in enrollment larger than Lawrence. So Brockton, Worcester, and Fall River were the 2 districts that had an increase in their student population larger than Lawrence, right? So we are getting more students with that.
Yay.
All right.
Yay. Patricia, can you hear us? Thumbs up, anything? She's connected? Okay, that's wonderful. So that means, Madam Chair, we have a quorum, because thank God Ms. Mariano was patient.
Indeed.
Suzanne, are you able to communicate with her and try to make sure that that connection is good while we continue? Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Cabrera.
Yes, sir. If you look at the slide that was up, the governor's budget came out, our foundation budget. grew by 11%. A lot of that is based on the increase in population of students, right? Across the state, the foundation budget only went up by 5.36%. Chapter 78 went up by 6.09%. So 5%, 6%, because of the increase in population that we had, ours went up by 11%. Right? So we're covering that influx of students, of families moving into Lawrence with those funds.
So hang on a second, Mr. Cabrera, so that those in the audience and we know what we're talking about. So that 11% is one of the highest increases in the state, is what you're saying when you look at the numbers. However, that 11% is justified by all of the conversations that we've been having of after the October 1st, Madam Chair, members of the board, of the increase in students that we have, something that our Assistant Superintendent Acosta is here that knows. So from that time, we've now received approximately 430, 474. Mr. Acosta, you're in the audience. Do you know how many, or Mr. Cabrera, how many new students that is?
Yeah, so you're perfect. I know it's over 300. I know we have had that conversation over and over again with,
He's nodding
our
his head,
Family
yes.
Resource Center and also with the high school, which
So
has
that's
seen the
why
greatest
that
increase.
11% represents the average across the state of Massachusetts, but without new students. That 11%, correct?
As of October 1st. Since October 1st, we've grown by another 300.
Yes.
So that money, we do not,
We didn't capture it in this current budget.
correct, we didn't capture that. So we are servicing another 300 students with the money that is for 300 less students, right?
Got it. Thank you.
So, okay, the slide, I believe you have the slide with you.
Yeah, we have
But, you know, what I want to highlight is just, you know, the big numbers. As far as foundation budget, $333,930,000. That's an increase per pupil of $2,135. Our per pupil spending, as it stands with the budget right now, it's $21,900. So we spend on average for our students across.
For every single one of our students, of the 14,300 students, it's $21,950 per each one of those students.
Correct.
So you calculate that, that's what should come out to that $339,930,425.
Correct. Understand that we're talking for the city of Lawrence here, and when we meet with the city and the controller and talk about the cherry, you know, the
Yep.
cherry sheet and how much money comes out for Chapter 74, which is vocational, how much money comes out for charter schools, how much, you know, that number is going to go down a bit, but in average for the kids that live in the city of Lawrence,
Got it.
we're spending $21,900 per child, okay? With that said, the city, let me see, we have, I have the contribution for the city, $16.3 million. That is 1.12 million over last year. I mentioned that we had a $2,135 per pupil increase. Of those $2,000, $73 is the increase of the city's contribution. Our Chapter 78, $317 million. That's 31 million above last year. And I believe I put here, as far as revenue, how much money we are getting, we have in grants. That is federal grants, state grants. Well, the bulk of our money is federal grants when it comes to grants. So state grants is about $2.5 million. Federal grants is about 14.5 million in between the Title 1, 2, 3. So
Point of correction.
yes, sir.
The 17 million that you're talking about in grants, you mentioned there is a percentage there that are state grants, and then there are federal grants. The key word there is federal.
Yes, sir.
14 million. Everyone understands what the situation is with the federal government and the current administration's call for dismantling, cutting back funds in the education department. The first place that we will see it or feel it would be those $14 million from federal grants, not state grants, correct? So 14 from 17 leaves us only $3 million, and that's for Title I services. Some of that would be special education services, our food service programs, and some other Title II grants, which is focused on English language learners. Okay, so that's something that we'll need to monitor. Okay.
Yes, sir. And that's something that when we're having our meetings, we continue to talk about contingency plans.
Correct.
How we can do without some of these things. So, going into the next fiscal year, a little bit more conservative and thinking, where can we get funds if we need to get funds? Okay. Again, I'm not going to go into the specifics. I just want to talk about the principles of our budgeting, equalizing across the district, making sure that the 500 children in one school in Mount Vernon have the same resources and funds as 500 kids in Tower Hill or Prospect Hill, wherever the child is, that they get the same thing.
So currently, the strategy of equity across the entire district, it's about those $339 million.
Correct.
Okay.
Minus, the money that goes to the children that are not in our district schools.
So currently, these are the numbers that you're operating with in
Correct.
preparing
Until I
the
meet with the
preliminary
city.
budget.
Yes, until I meet with the city and we determine what we're spending on Chapter 74 or we're spending on charter schools. But this is the number that the city of Lawrence gets for the children of the city of Lawrence.
Thank you, sir.
All right?
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Any questions?
Spend every nickel.
We're going to get a much detailed report, in the upcoming months, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Yes, you're gonna get
More than
the
we
whole
want.
333 million in Excel. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Cabrera. We appreciate it. Madam Chair, we'll move on to our next item. And before I bring in Dr. Jackie Pena, I'm going to just have Dr. Perry come up to help frame the presentation that Dr. Pena will make regarding the Dominican Republic Immersion Program.
Good evening.
Where are you? There you are. Thank you.
All right. I have a few slides for you. As Superintendent Carrero mentioned, he had asked me to provide a little bit of background and sort of context for the Dominican Republic Immersion Program. And so the way I sort of approach this is to think about the Department of Education's vision and their practices that are impacting districts, which then, of course, impact students and teachers in classrooms. And so the first slide is pulled right from DESE's website in terms of what culturally responsive and sustaining pedagogy is. So their definition and how that's leading to some of the practices that I'll talk about. So some of the words that I've highlighted here are about affirming and valuing the cultures, prior experiences, and linguistic resources of our students, making education relevant and effective, thinking about promoting academic achievement, cultural competence, and really valuing multilingualism as an asset. And so really focusing there and thinking about what our students bring to their classrooms and to their learning, and really having educators think about that deeply in order to instruct them in an effective way. This vision is not for some students, it's for all students, right? And I think that's really the vision that DESE has and that they're asking educators and districts to really embrace. And so when we do this, the idea is that all students benefit because it is for all students and not just for some students. And so visions, as you know, can be just as good as the paper that it's written on. It's the practices that we take this vision and bring it into action. And so one of the things that DESE has done this year and going into the next slide, is they have revised their educator evaluation rubrics to include and embed culturally responsive and sustaining practices within the standards for how educators are evaluated. And so rather than having it sort of just in a vision statement for everybody to interpret and take it or leave it, it's really now embedded in these rubrics in a different way than had been previously. And so I'm going to show you a couple examples of this, but next year, these rubrics were published in 2024. Lawrence is adopting those rubrics for implementation for the fall for 25-26. And so what that means is for our educators, when they go through the educator evaluation cycle, they will start the fall really self-assessing with these new rubrics in mind. So looking at the rubric, what it says, and thinking about their own practices and where they might need to grow, developing their own professional goals and their student learning goals aligned to those rubrics. And then, of course, administrators evaluating and having conversations around these rubrics in terms of their instructional practices. So, like I said, visions are only as good as the paper they're written on, unless we have practices that are going to hold those visions up in terms of accountability and expectation. And so the next two slides are examples for how the rubrics have changed. So I just pulled two examples. I didn't want to inundate you, but I've provided at the end of the slide deck links to the full rubric so you can start to see the differences between 2018 versus 2024. So the first one that I chose was well-structured lessons in Standard 1. Previously, this was really centering around how educators design their lessons around challenging tasks, measurable outcomes, pacing for students and activities that were embedded. And if you look at the new version, it's really around curriculum literacy. And it's really asking the educator to analyze the current students that are sitting in front of them and the curriculum that they've been given. So as I mentioned previously, we have high quality instructional materials. The educator is being asked to analyze that curriculum for its strengths and weaknesses according to their students. It's a very different expectation from what had previously been there, right? And this really brings in language around culturally sustaining instruction, identifying opportunities for meaningful, relevant connections. That's really moving our practices in a very different way from just, our educators creating challenging objectives to how the nature of the lesson and how it's really engaging students in terms of who they are, affirming who they are, using their assets in order to get them into the lesson and the learning. And then the second paragraph really talks about access points for all students, right? So educators really not thinking just about some students or the high-level students or the struggling students, but thinking about every student, what they need in order to access the lesson and the learning. The next example is around student engagement. Again, just an example, not the only one that exists, but there's a lot of these sort of side-by-sides. The student engagement one is from the second standard. And this is the language from proficiency around is the instruction likely to motivate and engage most students, right? So that was the 2018 version. The 2024 version, as you can see, is really different in terms of engaging instruction. It talks about relevant, real-world, and interactive learning. It talks about students to make their own choices, explore topics, apply learning in culturally and linguistically sustaining ways through real world and interactive contexts. I don't want to read it to you, but you can just kind of see the nature in which they've gone deeper in terms of what their expectations for educators are to make sure that they're educating all students in ways that are going to sustain the assets that students bring to the learning. And so I think the benefit of this is that it's no longer siloed work. It's not for some educators, it's for all educators. I think that's a move in the right direction. I think in some cases that may have been the expectation for certain educators in the system rather than all. Every educator will be evaluated according to these standards and expectations going forward, and I think that's a move in the right direction. And Finally, I think it also kind of goes beyond just lesson planning, like I said before, in terms of what's next, what's the next page in the curricular material, but really thinking deeply about students and what their needs are, who they are, and how to engage and motivate them in learning. And so I present all of that. Like I said, the resources are there, referencing back to DESE's educator rubrics, as well as their sort of guidance around supporting culturally and sustaining practices. And I say all of this because this is the context in which we want to make sure our educators are well prepared to be evaluated this way. How can we support them? And so I'll invite up Dr. Jackie Pena, who's really leading the work around the Dominican Republic Immersion Program, who is working with some of our educators to move this work even further into practice and support for them. Okay?
Welcome, Dr. Pena.
So that has to be, Jen has to be my partner in crime for all presentations moving forward. That was a great layup. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for having me here this evening. I was told I have 5 minutes to allow for a lot of Q&A, so I'm going to do my best. And so I'm going to give you more of a broader level kind of view of our program, the LPS Dominican Republic Teacher Immersion Program. And then that'll allow for you to ask the questions that will take us in the direction you want to go in for the things you're more curious about in terms of how we put this program together. But it is very much aligned to the new DESE rubric, so thank you so much for that layup there, for getting that going. If we could get to the next slide, just a little bit about the program itself and our bigger goals. We want to enhance culturally responsive teaching practices in our schools in alignment with DESE and district goals. The district is doing a lot of amazing things. Think of it as this huge quilt of culturally responsive teaching that's going to cover everything we're doing across the district for everyone. And this program is a big piece of that, along with all these other amazing programs that I've been seeing since I've gotten here. And so our program is running from February to June, but the actual immersion dates, just so you know, are April 18th through Sunday, April 27th, during the break, because our teachers do not want to disrupt teaching and learning for our students. We build the program on a theoretical framework with 3 pillars. I won't dive in too much into this. I just want to kind of give you a taste of what we're doing. And so the first pillar is based on funds of knowledge from Mo. So this is the idea that we should be learning everything we can from our students and family members, bringing in these funds of knowledge, taking them in and using that in how we create the classroom, how we teach, to create meaningful experiences, learning from students and parents. And our teachers have been doing that. The students are engaged in this process, by the way. They're sharing their background, they're telling us what we should look for, they're making the connections for us in the classrooms, and the families are also meeting with the teachers, and we're having these educational experiences where families are telling us about the educational system in the Dominican Republic and different levels of poverty and what does that mean when they come to the States. The second pillar is based on CRT, culturally responsive teaching. We're using the same framework as the state, so that's Geneva Gay, and so that overlaps beautifully with funds of knowledge, and Jen kind of put that together for you and showed you what that looks like in the actual rubric for our teacher evaluation. And the third pillar is the power of learning communities. I tend to call them faculty learning communities. I know the district calls them PLCs, professional learning communities. They're a wonderful way to foster collaboration, sustain meaningful work that can run for years in your classroom versus a traditional conference or workshop. But one of the beauties of doing this is the cross-collaboration of teachers across schools. You heard earlier today about that opportunity for schools to share best practices with each other. So that's what our teachers are already doing, and our coaches and counselors in the program. They are sharing and taking ideas back to their schools. So we're leveraging these 3 pillars, especially learning communities, within this theoretical framework. So how is our program designed? So the pre-trip phase, trip phase, and post-trip phase. In the pre-trip phase, we're actually we're examining our biases. We all have our lens. We all have our records. We all have our perspectives based on our backgrounds, our educational system, where we came from, how we grew up. So we're analyzing that and thinking about what does that mean when I'm teaching? What is that impact? We're looking at the connection between these amazing toolkits we have as teachers and student learning, and trying to see where is there a disconnect. How can I use this framework to help with that? Again, we're looking at funds of knowledge, so a lot of learning from students and families. I am visiting classrooms, all classrooms that these teachers are teaching in, and getting to know the students, and really having, seeing their lived classroom experiences, because in my coaching practice as part of this, I'm able to make those connections for them and really help them think about their teaching practices. And of course, I also have one-on-one interviews with them along with the coaching. Then comes the trip phase. In the trip phase, we're gonna have 10 hard working days in the Dominican Republic. I have to figure out how to give them at least the morning off, I know. But we're gonna be, I tend to just wanna go, go, go. But we have this amazing opportunity to do true cultural immersions, but also to visit with families. We're gonna have cafecito with Doña Elena in her yard in one small town. We're going to have the tamarind juice, jugo de tamarindo, in another town with another family. We're going to visit schools. We're actually going to see teachers working. We're going to have sessions with teachers and school directors. Our teachers have a lot of questions they've already developed for this. They really want to know more about the learning experience, the curriculum, the classroom style, because it's going to help them bridge that gap in their classrooms. So that's a lot of what we're going to do there, as well as community walking tours with the local priests and families and things of that sort. Our teachers are also doing service. This just came out of the blue. And I just shipped 3 huge boxes today to the Dominican Republic of book bags and shoes and school supplies for teachers, because in talking with the teachers over there, we know some students don't have shoes. They get one uniform, but they don't have shoes. And some students don't have book bags. They might have a plastic bag. And teachers don't even have construction paper or colored pencils to teach something creative in the classroom. So 3 boxes just left my house this morning. So that was a really beautiful thing, and I took pictures to send them tonight. In the post-trip, we got to analyze all of this. What does this all mean? What does this mean for my students, for my teaching? How do I make those connections in the classroom? They're also going to be looking at the DESI rubric. So they're actually looking at the rubric right now, and they're analyzing for every criteria, every item on that rubric. They're thinking about their strengths, their weaknesses, and what do they need to do better in each of those areas. When they come back, they're going to fill out the 4th column of that, which is what am I going to do in the new school year. So that's going to be part of the plan. And the last thing they're going to do, well, one of the many, not the last thing, other things, but one of them will be the mentorship plan. They will have to mentor 3 teachers at their schools for the new academic year. It's the ripple effect. I'm trying to get that, what they learn, to keep moving forward. So that's the program in a nutshell. We're collecting a lot of qualitative data because we think that that will yield some good information, as well as some quantitative throughout the whole process. And just to wrap up, this is the trajectory that we're taking. We're coming in through the south and making our way to the north. We are sleeping in 3 major towns just along the way and traveling in and out. You don't see a circle there, but as we make our way from the capital up to El Cibao, La Vega, and Santiago, we're going to be spending a day in Tenares, so we're going to be in the schools as well there. In La Vega, it'll be a small town that now does have running water and a paved road, so they'll get to see that difference as well. But that's just our trajectory for the 10 days. And I just wanted to show you one more picture, which is the next slide. And these are our teachers with our superintendent. We had a nice orientation in February, and I got a couple of mugshots for everyone. No, I'm just kidding, but just some nice pictures. But we have 11 teachers who are truly dedicated and are doing the pre-work to get ready for this program once we're there for the immersion. So thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm going to stop here. I know I went over 5 minutes. I cheated. I'm sorry, but ask me all the questions you have.
Questions, Madam Chair, members of the board?
Not so much questions, just thank you. This is exciting. I thank you for implementing or bringing this great idea. Again, no training or coaching is worth it if it doesn't have direct impact on our students, and I can see that this will have direct impact in all our students. So thank you so much. I look forward to hearing from the teachers. I would love to have a presentation from those educators, maybe to talk about their experience.
Yeah, next time I want to go.
So this program can be expanded, by the way, and thank you for recognizing that we're trying to make those concrete connections to the classroom, because I think that's always one of the most difficult things with PD. We do the PD, but now how do we know it's getting in there? I do have a question or a comment, which is if I could share a little bit about the selection process, and just so you know, we didn't just handpick our 11 teachers. They did have to do an extensive application. They had multiple written responses, so short essays, that looked at culturally responsive teaching, readiness for the immersion, readiness and willingness to really make true changes in their classroom and mentorship. We did a blind review process where we had people from the district that represent all aspects of the teacher evaluation rubric do a blind review and score these applications. They also scored, I know it's going to sound weird, they also had to videotape part of their application as an interview, and we transcribed that so they couldn't see the teachers and eliminated identifiable data so that it could be part of the process. And the top scoring faculty members or teachers were selected for the program. So if you ever want to know more about that process, I'll be happy to share that as well.
Are they bilingual?
Not all of them. And another comment is just our teachers, just so you know, the invitation that went out from our district, from our superintendent, was to all advanced and expert teachers. Those teachers might also be coaches in some instances, and expert teachers are coaches, so I think it's going to add a nice flavor. They're not all bilingual. Some of them have been trying to learn Spanish, and it's been fun to see their students teach them Spanish in the classroom when I stop by. And when I do these kinds of immersions, I usually buddy people up. So they'll be buddied up, one Spanish speaker, one non-Spanish speaker. And when they're in the schools, I'll use the same system, the buddy up system. Yeah. Any questions, comments?
What I love about this program too is that it recognizes that we can learn as much from other systems as they can learn from us. It's a true,
Yeah. I'm hoping for a good relationship, across the countries. I think it'll be very helpful. And I just want to thank our Superintendent Carrero and our Deputy Superintendent Carlos Matos as well, because they had this vision early on and trusted me to run with the program. And when you tell me to do something, I just grab it and run. So thank you for the trust.
Yes, thank you, Superintendent.
I will just share a couple of comments. I did, as you could see, I've met with the team that's getting ready on a couple occasions. And one thing that Dr. Pena, because she just went quickly with, and she said, and they've been engaging with the families. We've asked the Family Resource Center to identify families of ours, parents that come from those different areas in the Dominican Republic. And the teachers met with them to talk about what they're going to encounter in each one of those pueblos and towns that they're going to be visiting. And it just helps our parents come to value and appreciate the work that they're going to be doing. As she mentioned, they've helped connect already before going with the teachers that they're going to be meeting and visiting with in their classrooms. But I can't emphasize enough what Dr. Pena and Dr. Perry has mentioned about this work and about teacher evaluations and what their responsibilities are about having culturally responsive classrooms. This isn't easy work, especially if you're an American teacher and you have an entire audience of linguistic minority students. And how do you incorporate their culture the way that the Department of Education is saying? So the undertaking is very, very important, and it is the work is going to be cutting edge, because we're bringing those teachers back, and as Dr. Pena said, their work as an advanced teacher, which is the qualification to be an advanced teacher, you have to have a project for the whole year. And they're going to take on 3 teachers within their buildings that they're at and share with them and work with them on their experience and how they have already jotted down what they want to see and how they're going to ask questions. When they share that with our teachers here, she mentioned the ripple effect of how it's going to start to grow within our schools, so our teachers are stronger in terms of understanding the cultural, linguistic, and value that they bring to their classrooms. Why the Dominican Republic? Why did we choose the Dominican Republic, Madam Chair? the majority of our students. However, the success of this program this year, what's our second largest language minority population that we have? Guatemala. Where are we going next year?
Oh, no kidding.
Exactly. So it's the commitment that we have to our families to learn of their cultures, to see how education is developed. And Mary, you're from the Dominican Republic. You know that there's always a breakage in education. We need to figure out why, and then develop the strategies here. So how do we fill those gaps? What are the strategies that we use? The Dominican government already knows that they're going, thanks to Mr. Mato's efforts. So they'll be supporting the program and monitoring, and I believe a lot of other wonderful things are going to come out of this to help address the needs of that particular community, which is the largest community that we have here in the city of Lawrence, and will be able to, I think, have an impact on the gaps and that they have in education. So I'm thankful, and as Dr. Pena mentioned, all of these educators are seasoned educators, our best educators, because you cannot be an advanced educator or an expert educator if you can't fill that application process to the district that selects you. So they have their work cut out for them, but I think we have a great team that's going. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. I know I've kept you. Last but not least, Madam Chair, even though we've had a meeting only 2 or 3 weeks ago, the district moves forward. In March, you know, we're celebrating St. Patrick's Day, but that's not to say that we're also celebrating other things. Just real quickly around Lawrence Public Schools, here in March, we celebrated National Breakfast Week, okay? Students enjoy a special game and toy and what have you. Everyone knows that we have a universal breakfast and lunch program, and as we mentioned about monitoring cuts, if that happens at the federal government, probably our nutrition program will sustain some of that. But one thing that I want you to know about our nutrition program, and I want you to pay attention, you have this in your packet, and I wanted to put emphasis on the fact that these percentages of kids that are doing breakfast is way below our expectations. Next time you see these numbers, they'll be 85 and 95% across the entire district, okay? Adonis Hernandez has met with all of the principals along with Carol Noonan, our nutrition food director, to make sure that we're doing everything possible to create the strategies for kids to have breakfast in the classroom or in the cafeteria when they're coming in. So kudos to them. I know that they've already started to do that work, and we're going to demonstrate to the state that Lawrence takes advantage of the opportunities and the food service programs that they provide to us here in the district. The other thing that I wanted to mention is the Gilmet students visited the Addison Art Gallery. It's part of our performing arts program where we expose kids to the arts. As you already know, our performing arts students went to Florida and came back with the first place trophy with the highest score in 10 years. But our grammar school is the feeder program. And as you can see, they've been participating through the arts gallery that they visited. I mentioned earlier that although it's St. Patrick's Day, the mayor invited selected students from the high school to engage in the Dominican Independence Day breakfast celebration. There they are. They celebrated us with the mayor, and I think the senator was there at the second annual Dominican breakfast, Independence breakfast in Boston. I'm sure that they had a wonderful time. And
dedicated to Lawrence. These events, in Boston is dedicated.
It was dedicated to Lawrence?
To Lawrence.
Ah, no wonder. So we represented. That's good to know. To move along also, as you might recall, a lot of parents keep asking for more extracurricular activities and sports activities for their kids. There you have the intramural cheerleading showcase that was held at Lawrence High School Fieldhouse on Saturday the 8th. We had teams, I think it was approximately 9 teams. Our Oliver School cheerleading team won the competition, so kudos to them. Your next page has things that are happening around at the high school. That was the senior night event that they had for our students. The cheerleaders that you see, no, those are all basketball players. And some of you might not know that we have a tremendous female wrestling team. They don't often get a chance to wrestle a lot, but if you look at the young lady that's there, she represents our school at the All-State Championship this year, and she finished second in New England, okay? She's a tremendous, tremendous wrestler. Spring sports started this past Monday, okay? And Miss Maureen Santiago, our business pathway students visited Harvard University for a chance to pitch their imagination lab project while they were at MIT. The students spent 6 weeks building prototypes to solve problems they deeply care about. And they crafted ways to pitch these protocols over at MIT to their audience, okay? So a lot of things happen, not just in school, after school, in terms of our kids involved in extracurricular activities, and very importantly, meaningful, enriched activities for our kids. We want you to make sure that we've increased our parent engagement program. Our LPAC meeting is the 19th at 10 o'clock and at 6 o'clock at the library. The last time that we hosted them, there were close to 300 parents there. And obviously, the Lawrence High Theater program is hard at work. They're ready to present, believe it or not. They just came from presenting in Florida, and they will be performing Miss Saigon on April 4th and 5th, and then the 11th and the 12th at 6 p.m. at the Lawrence High School auditorium. So we hope that all of you can join us. As you can see, this is a busy place, Madam Chair, okay? I've taken enough of your time. Unless you have any questions regarding my update, you can see what's going on, and I think there's a lot of exciting things happening in the district, around the district, and our partnerships that we have in the district, okay? So, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Superintendent, for
no
that
other business.
presentation. Anybody has a comment or question? Pat? All right. Well, she's there. I'm not sure we can hear her, but unless anybody else has anything, I am going to ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Maria, please call the roll.
Dr. Doris Calaf,
Yes.
Maria Muller,
Yes.
Mayor Brian de Peña.
Yes.
We're adjourned to our next meeting. Thank you, everybody.
We are adjourned. Thank you.